Hey, how you doing out there? This is Mark Brody with Coffee Talk with Brohawk episode featuring Nichole Harrop. And I'm excited to have Nichole on as my guest. And I appreciate everybody's time. And I think it's important that Nichole introduces herself and talks a little bit about what her passions are. And Nichole, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on your show, Mark. I am so excited about our topic today. Yeah, for everyone, I'm Nichole Harrop. I am a women's leadership and career coach. I am super passionate about helping women to become leaders in the workplace. It's definitely something that is so needed at all levels of every organization in the efforts of DEI as well. I focus specifically on women. So, my career, I joke about being born and raised in a call center environment because that is mostly what I've done most of my life and have loved it, all the different aspects. And I started entry level and grew into different leadership positions and have loved working at different tech startup companies over the last several years. A little bit about me personally, I am born and raised in northern Utah, and I am married. We have two young daughters, and I stay very busy. I love working. I also have a podcast myself called Next Level Leaders. And again, it's helping women grow their confidence and working to advance their careers. And yeah, I am really excited to be chatting today.
Hey, Nichole, thank you very much. And for those of you who have not listened to her podcast before, Nichole's podcast, I mean, it is a must listen to. And I'm going to make sure that I share the link out with my network as well. I think it's something that even just listening to one episode, you'll want more. It's kind of like binge listening, I guess. Very much worth it. Um, well, as you do a lot of consulting as well and coaching women in that are looking to aspiring to promote either within the organization or possibly even within another organization. As an outsider looking into an organization, how can you tell if coaching and developing women leaders is a priority, and is it even effective within an organization as an outsider looking in? How can you tell?
Yeah, great question. So, a lot of companies that I talk with in efforts of really growing and expanding their leadership for more being more inclusive and focusing on DEI efforts as overall. Of course, I come in focusing on how can we help women stand out more in the workplace and feel that support because it's different for men versus women. And as a general outlook, of course, there's all of the other nuances as well. But uh, when I'm talking to a company, and I mean, really, you could show me your organizational chart, and I can tell you real quick if DEI efforts or really women in leadership is important to you. If it's all older white men,
Uh-huh.
it's probably maybe something that you aspire to do, but maybe aren't taking the right action on. And those are two key parts. It's we all want to be doing more and we feel the responsibility to do more, but what action are we actually taking versus something like the writing on the wall or the words that are written in our handbooks? It's in our action. So what are we doing to support these people, to provide mentorship opportunities, or to have certain support groups around the women in your organizations to help lift them up? And I think that's so important to allow them to have a voice. And, if you have, let's say, for example, a maternity leave policy that was created by men, and maybe some of these men
Mm,
don't have children of their own. So, how do you know that it's a really great policy for the people who are actually going to be utilizing it? So, it's
yes.
different things like that where people making certain decisions higher up maybe aren't getting a full picture if they aren't including women or people of color, minority people, to feel that inclusive. If you're focused on inclusivity and building a great culture where people feel safe at work, that's a huge effort. So yeah, simply seeing an organizational chart, I can tell you real quick if any of that has been done or kind of what work we need to do.
One of I actually listened to one of your podcasts, not actually, but I listened to a lot of your podcasts. But one of the episodes that I listened to recently was talking about um, being heard in meetings.
Mhm.
And I think if as an outsider looking in, if you sit in on a meeting, that's going to give you a real either big green flag or red flag. Something's working or not working. What do you think about that?
Yes, such a big one. And that was a popular episode where, yeah, people, sometimes more introverted people don't feel like they have an opportunity to speak up, or perhaps it's people who maybe are a little bit more overly aggressive. I'm someone who, yeah, I'm a female, but I have no problem voicing my opinion in meetings. But that took a lot of time and years to grow that the grit and the resilience and feeling that foundation of psychological safety in the workplace by my leaders to push
Mm,
back on what they are saying, to feel like, regardless of what I say, it's still a safe place to share my thoughts and opinions. So, yeah, especially as sometimes men are wondering, how can I support the females in the workplace? And I can remember a specific situation of someone doing that in an entry level position. He said, how can I, provide women more of a voice in this organization? And it just brought tears to my eyes because I thought that was so amazing that he's saying, how can I be that ally to these women in the workplace and give them that
mm,
voice? And I've had so many amazing male colleagues and male leaders who have recognized, okay, how can I have this person who's slightly more introverted or more quiet in a group setting? But we've had amazing one-on-ones. How can I get them to share their opinion? And it's a big part of having those communications outside of your meetings and saying, hey, if we talk about, let's say it's whatever subject, it's talking about culture building, and you have a lot of valuable opinions. Would you be okay if I invite you to share those in a group setting if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself? So it's those little small things that men and other women can do to help support people who maybe are a little bit more quiet or more apprehensive to share their thoughts, and let them get their feet a little bit wet, because it's not always the loudest person speaking who is maybe going to make the most impact at an organization.
One of the things that you just brought up there that I feel is very insightful is a leader in a meeting should never assume that somebody is okay to speak up. And it's important to always ask permission if this is okay, and make sure, because you don't want to single somebody out. You don't want somebody to feel more uncomfortable. Especially women who aren't used to being called out in a positive way. Um, for their for the thoughts and ideas that they have, to share it with the rest of the group in a meeting setting. Um, and you got to ask that permission, I would assume.
Mhm.
I found that in my career, that's something that I've done, and I've been able to do very successfully. And but it's hard.
Mhm. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had great leaders who say, let's say, for example, they're calling on me and saying, hey, Nichole, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or they allow for a pause. And, sometimes that is the awareness of the leader who's owning that meeting. If there are people, or maybe it's one person, we all have that like one person who really dominates a meeting. And it's having conversations as well with those people in a separate meeting or experience where you're saying, hey, I appreciate your thoughts so much. And I really value the rest of the team as well. And what I'm perceiving when you're speaking, because I'm looking out at the room and watching other people as they are receiving what you're saying. Sometimes I feel like people aren't opening up because you are so quick to respond to everything that I'm saying. So kind of figuring out the ways with some of the people who are a little bit more willing to share their opinion, to say, hey, your opinion is absolutely valuable. How can we make it so that other people also have room to speak, and having that moment of quiet to allow people to share their thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. You talked a little bit about mentoring, in our opening as well. And leadership diversity is so important. What role does mentoring play for women looking to be promoted um, into next levels or senior leadership levels?
Yeah. Mentoring is so big. And it's funny because when you say the word mentorship, it seems so official. Like I need to have
Yes.
an official paperwork that says, like, I am a mentor, or like I am being mentored. Because when I talk about this often on my podcast of finding a mentor, I'll have people reach out and they're like, well, I talked to, someone in my workplace who's like a couple levels ahead. Is that a mentor? Does it have to be official? And so yeah,
Mm.
there's so much need for that, and it doesn't need to be official by any means. It can be inside the workplace. I think it's extremely helpful to have a mentor inside the workplace. Hopefully that is your leader, but in addition to that, looking for someone outside of that. So if you have a male leader, where is a female leader, or someone of a different color or race or gender identification than you, so that you can have that different experience with them. We tend to, connect with people who look like us and who sound like us. So
Mhm.
it makes sense in some ways why there are a lot of companies that have that leadership structure of white men, because that's who they are naturally drawn to. So it does take additional effort to connect with people who are outside of that initial comfort zone, so to say. So reaching out and having conversations, building those relationships turn into a mentor kind of relationship, where it's someone you can go ask for their advice. Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, I'm looking to grow into this role. What do you think I could do to prepare for that? So anyone who's in the role that you're looking to be in, that's exactly what I suggest in several podcast episodes when looking for a mentor, to
Mhm.
go and check out on LinkedIn, search that title and find other people at other companies in that
Yes.
role, so that you can start networking with them. Right, we want to be talking with people who are in the places we want to be at, to really know, is this where I want to go? Is this the
Mhm.
position that I'd be actually interested in? Right, we sometimes start a job and we're like, oh, this isn't the right place for me. How could you help avoid that or learn what you're interested in? Then actually talking to someone who's doing that day in, day out, and understanding what they're doing as well.
The power of networking is so important. Um, and I sometimes think that people that are within an organization will sometimes have a certain lens that they see everything through. So it's important to network, as you said, network outside of your organization and get that different perspective, get that different lens. How can this situation? It totally removes any of the politics or predetermined or preconceived notions about a person or an area or anything like that. If you can get that other lens, and I love what you brought up about it doesn't even have to be someone with the same gender identification or race or ethnicity or anything like that. Anybody can be a mentor to anyone else, but as a mentee, would you say you have to be open to seeing things through someone else's lens
Mhm.
to understand what it's going to take to get to that next level?
Yeah. As a mentee, I think it's great to to search for those mentors in a way that, yes, other organizations, thinking of, let's say, so my experience recently has been more in like tech companies. So
Mhm.
I would look for some mentors in tech type of roles, but then I'm also going to look at some mentors who mentor opportunities for people who work for very well established companies,
Mhm.
because there are so many different nuances of leadership style between these different types of roles and organizations. So,
Mhm.
yes, as the mentee, you're absorbing everything that you are learning from these interactions. And these are, they again don't have to be super formal. You can honestly write a post on LinkedIn that says, hey, I am looking for a mentor. This is where I'm at in my career. This is where I want to go. I'd love to
Mhm.
be connected with anyone who who are in these roles, and have them tag them or say, hey, I'd love to be introduced through, a DM or whatever that looks like. Asking for what you need and being really specific, because someone may not even identify as a mentor, right? We just are wanting to help people. So we don't say, oh, I'm a mentor, right? It kind of naturally creates that title when you're building relationships with people. And likely you, even at an entry level, can be a mentor to other people in your organization as well. So people sometimes like hold that on a pedestal, but I'm like, no, you can create a post on LinkedIn or ask someone else to create the post who has maybe a bigger following than you, and see how you can get connected with people, and then be that sponge soaking things up and thinking, okay, I'm going to try that on. Or maybe you're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's cool to know these different experiences. And I think so often we're missing those pieces of learning what other people are experiencing, or what their methodologies are, because we might have a one track mind because we've learned from one leader. So we think that's the one way. And that's
Yes.
simply not the case.
I would completely agree with that. And you brought up the entry level, or those junior levels that are really looking for. Nobody comes into an office and, like you said, they don't have a badge. Hello, my name is mentor, or hello, my name is mentee. It just doesn't work like that. And you know people are always going to naturally gravitate to people that have um, similar likes or similar experiences to them. But a big part of the mentoring process is being okay to get out of your comfort zone, and understand. I hate to say a mile in someone else's shoes, because sometimes that's not always as easy as it sounds.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. Um, so how can women in entry level or junior roles really become more proactive with the coaching conversation?
Mhm.
They go in, a person goes into a conversation, and they're just not getting the coaching that's needed. It's all about numbers, or it's very superficial. How can women in those types of roles become more proactive with getting out of coaching what they need?
Definitely. So I think in my experience with my roles working for call centers, is so much is put on leaders to be leading these teams and helping, move things along with those metrics and the accountability. And, your one-on-one with your boss might be only 30 minutes every other week, if that, and maybe they're pushing it off. And so you feel like super deprioritized, and that can be really frustrating. That's why people quit their bosses, not their jobs, because they don't feel that support. So I think something that is really important is taking control of what you can. So in those conversations, if you are building a great relationship with your leader, talking about, hey, I'd love to, like, don't give them full control of how your one-on-one is put together. Suggest other ideas and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about what your thoughts are on this, or I'd love to learn more about what your experience was like. Learn how they grew up into their role, if you aspire
Mhm.
to grow into other positions. Again, networking internally is so important. People
Yes.
often mistake that as office politics, but if you're doing it with good intentions, that networking ability and building those friendships and showing people what your strengths are and your opportunities for improvement, people are going to want to work with you because they can picture that, and they know what they're getting, versus someone from the outside coming in. They're not quite sure what they're going to get other than, an initial interview, let's say. So very important to take control over what you can. And having conversations, if there are opportunities for skip levels, meaning you meet with the leader above your leader, or there are opportunities to provide feedback to your team, I always say, I hope you're giving your leader the benefit of the doubt as often as possible. Assume the best and say, hey, how can we make these coaching sessions, a little bit more fruitful, so we're not only talking about numbers, because I feel kind of like a statistic. Sharing that with them and say, hey, do you think we could talk about this? Or, hey, like I started reading this, like, could we read a book together? Or what does that look like? And start suggesting some ideas and see what they're open to, because some of these leaders didn't get any training, right? They got promoted
Yes.
maybe because they were good at their job, and they're not actually the best leader, because, that transition, you don't get a lot of training. You
Yep.
kind of learn on the go, and we do the best we can. And maybe they had a mentor that wasn't always the best at directing them, and so they're doing the best they can with you, and it's not always a great experience. So sharing that feedback, and then also taking things into your own hands as often as you can as well. So many options for personal development out there. I am constantly looking on Audible to see what kind of books there are that can help me have more perspective in my leadership thinking. Podcasts, especially, easy way to consume content when I'm on the go. What's going to help me have additional perspective to be a better leader to my team, and to continue to grow and to expand kind of what that bigger picture looks like for me. And taking whatever opportunities, especially the thing I that drives me most crazy is when there are opportunities for career development and people aren't taking them because they feel like they have so many other things they need to do that they don't prioritize themselves. And if you are not prioritizing yourself each week for your professional development, that's the one thing I feel like I have the most regret on, is not taking more time, a little bit out of my week, 15-30 minutes per week on me, so that I felt like I was having that growth.
I could not agree more, Nichole. Having taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and really owning your own destination rather than allowing others to make decisions for you or about you, is so important. And some of the really great women leaders that I've had the privilege to work with and work for, they've done exactly that. What you talked about. They've owned their seat at the table. They've owned their ascent. They made time to constantly be learning, and constantly be out there positively networking with others. And it was never about the office politics. It was always about, how can I become better so that I'm basically making the decision about where I want to be, as opposed to somebody else making that decision for me. So that's great. Hey, we're getting close to the end here, but as we wind up our conversation today, what would be the top 3 takeaways you would want viewers to remember from today's conversation?
Sure. Well, as a plug to my podcast, episode 5, super early on, so don't judge me based on how early I started out. I'm celebrating 3 years this week on my podcast. But
Congratulations.
thank you. Episode 5 talks about how to find a mentor. So if you want more information on that, we talked about that a lot today. So go check that one out. A big takeaway is learning how to become an ally to others in the workplace. And in this sense, I'm talking about whether you are male, female, however you identify with as a gender, figuring out how you can become an ally to at least one other person in the workplace. How can you help them have more of a voice in meetings? How can you help them feel more confident? Maybe they shared something and you could tell that they were a little bit nervous or apprehensive, or maybe they need, a high five, or like, hey, thank you so much for your input, your feedback, whatever that looks like. Find someone who you can help lift up. And as you start to build that relationship, you'll start spreading that elsewhere as well. I love, my podcast is for women, but I love when men listen in and they can get that additional perspective of, oh, wow, I never thought, like, I've never had that issue in the workplace of not feeling like I could speak up in a meeting. I didn't know that was an issue for certain people, and sometimes especially women. So you're learning ways, and you're like, oh, I can become an ally to a female coworker and help support her in, speaking up or feeling more confident as well. Another part is that mentorship, proactively seeking that out, and not feeling like you're ever a burden to the person you're reaching out to. You're always, in that episode 5, I talk about ways to approach that on LinkedIn, to where you're messaging someone and then you say, hey, no worries if this is, if you have too much on your plate, I appreciate any time that I'm able to meet with you, and kind of outlining what that could look like, so that the potential mentor also knows kind of what to expect, especially if they don't consider themselves as one. So setting expectations with mentorship. And then the third one would be taking control of your journey into, your career, recognizing that it is not your leader's responsibility to help you get promoted. That sure, it looks great for them, so they might have that passion, and some leaders are really amazing at it and others aren't. So if you're not getting that from your direct leader, find other leaders in your organization, or the mentorship path, and taking ownership of things that you can do on your own, so that you aren't later regretting the things that you didn't take action on.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Mhm.
So just real quick, just a speed round, right? Real quick, right here. So, what fact about Nichole would people be surprised to learn about you?
When I was thinking about this, I thought of several different things, but in this conversation specifically, I think people would be surprised to learn that I didn't do any college. I am very proud of the fact that I don't have a college degree, and I've learned so much on the job over my years in different industries, of really saying, like, I'm here to soak it all in and be, like, so moldable. I don't have any preconceived, ideas or notions of what I think it should be. I come in with
Yes.
that, like, soak it all in and let me see how I can best benefit this organization where it's at right now. And I've received a lot of compliments from other, CEOs and leaders who I've worked with, that are surprised by, like, not surprised, but like impressed of, like, the knowledge that I've gained over time. And I love being that mentor to other people, to say, you don't need a college degree to get amazing opportunities. And I feel like I am proof of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, just listening, just talking to you today and previously, I mean, your journey has been absolutely amazing, and what you've been able to do with your podcast is, I mean, 3 years. I mean, most people get bored after about 3 minutes
Mhm.
of putting a podcast together. So, I mean, hats off to you. So, what is your ideal off the grid location?
Mm. Well, we're about to head out to Fish Lake, that's here locally in Utah. There is no service. We head up and
Nice.
camp with my husband and his family, and probably one of my favorite places to go because it's so peaceful. I love being up in nature. If it's not there, not so much off the grid because I still have service, but I love snowboarding here locally in Utah. It's something that brings so much peace, and I love going snowboarding by myself and just enjoying nature.
Oh man, and previously living in Utah myself, I mean, probably one of the most beautiful states I've ever been to. Definitely having the privilege of living there. as well. I mean, the mountains, I mean, the
Mhm.
snow, it's just amazing out there.
It really.
Um, my favorite drive is coming through from Park City down to the valley through I-80, and I mean it's just amazing. That drive, I love it.
Yes,
Um,
no matter what time of year, that is a beautiful route. Absolutely.
exactly, exactly. So if someone wants to learn more about the work that you do,
Mhm.
you just want to have that conversation about things that they may be struggling with, how should they go ahead and contact you?
Yeah, yeah. So I would definitely say start off with that episode number 5 over on any podcast app that you're tuning into. One of my most popular episodes is episode number 30, How to Confidently Ask for a Raise. By far, it's the biggest impact for people looking for that.
Yes.
But I would say if you're a company tuning in and you're thinking, wow, we really need to make some changes and figure out how to provide more support for our female leader or females in the workplace who aspire to grow, whether
Mhm.
that makes them leaders in their title or leaders as themselves in their current positions, because I absolutely believe there can be both. And that you can reach out via email. It's info@nicholeharrop.com.
Yeah, that is awesome. Nichole, thank you very much for your time today. It is so much appreciated. And also check out her podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's Next Level Leaders Podcast. Definitely worth your time. I guarantee that you will be binge listening to these. I know I did. And you also have a leadership coaching as well that you do on the side.
Correct. Yep. Leadership and career coaching. So in different episodes, I'll talk about it. But yeah, if you are on my website, nicholeharrop.com, there's all sorts of information as to leadership and career coaching. If you're in that position where you're thinking, I need to take control of my own journey, that's exactly where you'll want to go.
Fantastic. And as always, if you'd like me to go ahead and make an introduction with Nichole, I'd be more than happy to. Nichole, once again, thank you for your time today. Great conversation. And if you want to get a hold of Nichole, NicholeHarrop.com, or contact me directly, or get a hold of Nichole on LinkedIn. She will definitely respond to your messages. I guarantee that.
That's
All
correct.
right, Nichole. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, you too, Mark.